The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Don't you know? Oh, baby, don't you know? Don't you know? Oh, baby, don't you know?
We did discover that a foreign national, Christopher Steele, was paid through Fusion GPS. Are you concerned that that was paid for to manipulate the American people in the lead up to an election?
Isn't that closer to the mandate than Michael Cohen? Having something to do with paying some Stormy Daniels woman $130,000? I mean, which is going to turn out to be perfectly legal. That money was not campaign money. Sorry, I'm giving you a fact now that you don't know. It's not campaign money. No campaign finance violation.
So they funneled it through the law firm.
Funneled through the law firm, and the president repaid it.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Well, all this happened right before my show last night. You know, and I've just gotten used to the fact that we have breaking news almost every night on the Ingraham Angle. And Rudy did this sit-down with Hannity, and there was a lot he discussed. We're going to get into all of it. But, of course, when I heard that line, I thought, okay, here goes. Here comes the feeding frenzy. And let's face it. That statement does seem, at the very least, to contradict what the president said on April 6th on Air Force One. Of course, when the president said, over the shouts of the questions asked by reporters traveling with him, he said, he didn't know about the payment, and he said, you'll have to ask Michael Cohen about this. The president this morning tweeted about this, and I'll read the entire tweet, but he basically said, look, this was about a retainer that I paid routinely, and my attorney paid and worked for me and on a variety of issues, and celebrities and high net worth people face this type of extortion and shakedown efforts, and he handled that stuff for me. And we're going to be using Stormy Daniels' non-disclosure agreement against her, and we're going to be using that because she said, and she signed a statement saying she never had an affair with him, and then when she thought she could, I guess, make more money and notoriety, she decided to change her story. So that's essentially what the president tweeted today in response to the firestorm that was set off last night. And Rudy Giuliani clearly has taken this case into a new posture. They are preparing for the Mueller desire to have the president interviewed, and they're negotiating the terms of any interview. And Michael Cohen and the Stormy Daniels case, of course, threw a big monkey wrench into all of that, because now the Southern District of New York has all of Michael Cohen's documents, which I still say is a complete and utter outrage. For a lawyer's office to be raided for a $130,000 payment that, frankly, a lot of these, big deal celebrities find themselves in a position where people are suing them on spurious grounds. The fact that that was the justification for raiding an attorney's office when an investigation started on Russia manipulating the U.S. election is just farcical. But that's where we are. And the president and his legal team expanded yesterday. Emmett Flood, who is a longtime friend of yours truly, he and I actually were law clerks together on the Second Circuit back in the day for Ralph Winter. Emmett Flood from Williams and Connolly is now representing the president in this Mueller investigation. So he has a lot of lawyers on his team, but without a doubt, Emmett Flood, that gives me a great sense of relief that he finally has somebody on his team who is, I think, up to the task of dealing with a an impending effort to impeach this president. So that was big news yesterday. John Dowd was out in March as the president's attorney in the Mueller investigation. And then Ty Cobb, the handlebar mustache Ty Cobb, is going to be out by the end of May. So that's where that stands. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. We have some great guests on tap today. And we're going to be, of course, unpacking the entire hour of Rudy Giuliani in his interview with Sean Hannity. Alan Dershowitz is going to join us at 9:35, and a lot more coming up. One thing that I've got to say was, in my mind, really interesting yesterday is when we heard from Rudy Giuliani, and James, you're just going to have to play the sound bites because I can't see them. What Rudy Giuliani discussed Jim Comey, and when he discussed the attempt to subpoena perhaps the president to testify before a grand jury. Let's listen to more of this interview.
When you look at those questions about what does the president think, what does the president feel, what does the president really desire, those are all questions intended to trap him in some way in contradicting what is, in fact, a very, very solid explanation of what happened. He fired Comey because Comey would not, among other things, say that he wasn't a target of the investigation. He's entitled to that. Hillary Clinton got that, and he couldn't get that. So he fired him, and he said, I'm free of this guy.
Well, Giuliani 5, I want to go to that soundbite. That's the one I really wanted. Let's listen.
I know James Comey. I know the president. Sorry, Jim, you're a liar, a disgraceful liar. Every FBI agent in America has his head down because of you. It would have been good for God if God had kept you out of being head of the FBI.
Explain where he lied.
Well, he lied about his conversation with McCabe. He knew all of McCabe's conflicts. McCabe should testify against him. He lied about his conversations with the president. He lied about the fact that they talked about whether the president was a subject or a target. Then he immediately changed it. It's one lie after another.
Well, Jim Comey's reputation, I think, is clearly in the toilet. There's no doubt about that. But the main concern today is the Giuliani coming out last night. And clearly this was a legal strategy. He came out last night because it appears at the very least that the president was speaking, well, I mean, he was speaking in a, slipshod way, or was he misrepresenting the facts, or did he not know the full specifics of what Michael Cohen paid and why he paid it, which is why he answered the question the way he did. Now, if we have more of Giuliani, when Giuliani said, well, he didn't know the specifics. Let's go to 3, please.
Do you know the president didn't know about this? I believe that's what
he didn't
Michael
know about
said.
the specifics of it, as far as I know. But he did know about the general arrangement that Michael would take care of things like this, like I take care of things like this for my clients. I don't burden them with every single thing that comes along. These are busy people.
Well, that could be the case where they had kind of a general conversation of like, oh my God, this other woman is trying to shake you down for money, and I'll take care of it. And he was already on a $35,000 a month retainer. And so out of that retainer was, Cohen ended up paying himself back. The question is whether that ends up being an in-kind contribution that needed to be disclosed as far as campaign finance laws and regulations require. So that's an outstanding question, and we'll be discussing that tonight on the Ingraham angle and with Alan Dershowitz. But that could have been the distinction. I'm not trying to split hairs or certainly make excuses for the president going back to the reporters on Air Force One and saying, you're going to have to ask Michael Cohen about that. I didn't know about the $130,000. Well, maybe he didn't. Maybe he knew about a general effort to shake him down. Maybe he knew about a 130, knew about a settlement, but not the actual number, in which case what he said to the reporters could be, in fact, accurate. We have the original. Do we have the original Air Force One statement, James, that we could play? I mean, it is kind of difficult to hear, but do you? Okay, let's listen.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth or allegation?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
No, I don't know.
So, do you know where he got the money? I don't know. Well, again, Michael Cohen might have paid Stormy Daniels' attorney. He paid it out of his own money initially, and then the president paid him back when he was president, probably president-elect or candidate, but paid him back through the retainer. But you could make the argument that most of what Trump said there was accurate. No, I didn't know about the $130,000 payment. Maybe he didn't know the specifics of how much she was asking for. Maybe he knew that she wanted a money for a release, but she didn't know. He didn't know how much it was going to be. So that could be the case. I mean, I'm just trying to see it from all sides here. I can certainly see why the left is going nuts about this. Absolutely can understand that. But I also can see how specific knowledge of the NDA that, remember, the president did not sign, and the amount of money she requested, I could see that. I mean, I could see that. I don't have any experience with that kind of thing, but I could see that. Especially if Trump has a lot of nuisance litigation that he deals with. Here's the tweet that went out about an hour plus ago. It sounds like it was written by an attorney and then typed by the president, and I'll tell you why I think that. Mr. Cohen, an attorney, received a monthly retainer not from the campaign and having nothing to do with the campaign, from which he entered into, through reimbursement, a private contract between two parties known as a non-disclosure, NDA. See, this sounds like a lawyer. These agreements are very common among celebrities and people of wealth. In this case, it is in full force and effect and will be used in arbitration for damages against Ms. Clifford, Stormy Daniels' real name. The agreement was used to stop the false and extortionist accusations made by her about an affair, despite already having signed a detailed letter admitting there was no affair. Prior to its violation by Ms. Clifford and her attorney, this was a private agreement. Money from the campaign or campaign contributions played no role in this transaction. Roll is spelled R-O-L-L. I imagine after this Giuliani interview, in which he made that statement about the president, the president reimbursing Cohen, I, number one, in the light of day, think that was all planned. Number two, I think the president's new lawyer, I imagine, Emmett Flood, said, okay, we're going to litigate this in the press. Okay, you better send this out. This is what I would recommend. And that's what happened. That's what I believe. 855-40-LORD. Does any of this concern you? We have great news, I think, in the coming out on this Title X issue with Planned Parenthood funding being cut by the administration. I believe the president's going to do the right thing there. We discussed that last night on the Ingraham angle. Alan Dershowitz is going to bring us the latest as this Michael Cohen issue, I think, bubbles up again because of the Giuliani interview last night. At one point in this tweet that I just read, of course, Donald Trump calls him Mr. Cohen. I think he's an old friend. He calls him Mr. Cohen. That's also interesting. Are they concerned that Michael Cohen is being pressured to, in some way, give up testimony on the president? A lot of people speculating that that's the case. Meanwhile, as all this is going on, the president's approval numbers are at 49%. This is the Rasmussen daily tracking that tends to track higher than Gallup, as we all know. And Rasmussen has been pretty accurate, is more accurate than most polls before the election cycle. And among African Americans, the numbers for men supporting this, African American men supporting the president, has doubled to 21%. And the overall number has doubled from 8% to, I think, 16.1%. We discussed that last night on the Ingraham angle. Is it the Kanye effect? I don't know. But I'm telling you, the Democrats know if Donald Trump is able to grow his African-American support, it's over for them. It is completely over for them. I don't care how many special counsels they appoint. They rely on. I don't care how much of the demonization goes on. If Donald Trump is able to build out his coalition and include African Americans, the Democrats are just finished. And I think they know that. Don't go away.
Hey guys, it's Kelty Knight from the Lady Gang podcast. If you're into getting a very sassy, sexual, beautiful, inspiring, funny, oftentimes embarrassing, slightly anal podcast in your repertoire, subscribe to us, Lady Gang, on Podcast One, the Podcast One app. And please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts.
He didn't know the details of this until we knew the details of it, which was a couple weeks ago. Maybe not even a couple, maybe 10 days ago. Mm-hmm. Remember when this came up? October 2016. I was with him day in and day out then. I can't remember the details of what happened. And this was, I know 135,000, and I don't want to, demean anyone, but 135,000 seems like a lot of money. It's not when you're putting $100 million into your campaign.
Well, I speculated that might be the case last night on the Ingraham angle. And I thought, okay, April 6th is when he told the reporters on Air Force One that he didn't know about the $130,000 payment. It seemed to me strange that if Donald Trump knew about the payment, he would have just gone to the reporters and answered the question. Why would he have done that? So Rudy is saying that the president basically just learned about it. 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. So that would make it after the April 6th questions from reporters on Air Force One, meaning it wouldn't have been a lie. He wasn't lying. He wasn't misrepresenting. And then after that, he finds out after the raid on Cohen's office, which was about 10 days ago, right? Two weeks ago. So after the raid on Cohen's office, he's like, okay, wait a second. They're after this documents. And then he's like, okay. Then he learns about it, and he finds out that, in fact, Michael Cohen used the $35,000 retainer to pay off the money that he personally spent on it. I guess that's what they're going to say. I speculated in live television last night that might be the case, and that was Rudy on Fox and Friends this morning saying just that. We're going to get the analysis of the current situation as this investigation is coming to a head, no doubt about it. Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus, and a lot more coming up.
As long as I'm paying the bill, woman, I'm paying the cost to be the boss.
I remember when Michael Cohen was interviewed about it, and it seemed like he was saying that he was never reimbursed that $130,000, and now it sounds like the story's changing.
He was definitely reimbursed. There's no doubt about it.
So why did he say he wasn't?
Maybe. First of all, if we had to defend this as not being a campaign contribution, I think we could do that. This was for personal reasons. The president had been hurt personally, not politically, personally so much, and the First Lady, by some of the false allegations. That one more false allegation, 6 years old. I think he was trying to help the family, and for that, the man is being treated like some kind of villain, and I think he was just being a good lawyer.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Rudy goes on Fox and Friends after the interview on Hannity. I've been dying to talk to Alan Dershowitz about all of this, and he joins us now. Professor, how you doing? Good to talk to you.
Hey, I'm doing great. Nice to be back talking to you.
So, Professor, this happened right before my show last night. And so when I heard that statement from Rudy, I said, that's the reason for the interview. Okay, they had to get that out there, perhaps, because they know now that the government has these documents. after the outrageous raid, in my view, at least, on Michael Cohen's office. What was your take on how this went down last night?
Well, I think it really shows the virtue of silence. It's so much better if you have a case that's being investigated, and this case is the subject both of a civil lawsuit and perhaps of a government investigation. It's so much better to remain silent and present a single, coherent, consistent, factually based view in court at the appropriate time in response to specific questions. What happens is when everybody expresses a view, they may all be consistent, they may all line up, but they don't sound consistent when they come from different sources at different times. And it gives the media, particularly the media that is always out to get anybody in the Trump administration, it gives them an excuse to try to line up the statements, parse them, and try to show that there may be some differences. I mean, I actually see some overall consistency here. The way I understand what Rudy said was, look, the president gave this guy a $35,000 a month retainer. He didn't earn it. His job was to, solve these issues. He had discretion how to do it. He solved the issue by making this payment. The money came out of the retainer that he was paid, the unearned parts of the retainer that he was paid. The president wasn't told of specific instances of what Cohen had done until he learned about it later. That all is consistent, but it just doesn't sound consistent when it comes from different sources, each of whom give a little bit of the story.
Yeah, well, I always remember my conversations with Brendan Sullivan, who, every time I would say, oh, I want you to come on and talk about this, or he said, Laura, you've known me for like 32 years. Why would you think I would start litigating my cases in the press now? And he said, that's not how I have ever rolled, and that's not what I do. And I have never thought it was good. Yeah.
Right. He was a potted plant when it came to the media, and he refused to be a potted plant when he had a role to play in front of the congressional committee that was investigating it. That was the right approach. He learned that from Ed Bennett Williams. Ed Bennett Williams, who was a friend of mine, who was one of the greatest lawyers of the 20th century, had a rule in his firm. He said, no one talks to the media, no one talks to the media except me, and he would just whisper to the media. He represented the Washington Post. He had his sources. If he wanted a story in, he knew how to get it in, off and off the record, without attribution. But Williams was a master of the media, and I think everybody who works in that firm, David Kendall, Brendan Sullivan, all understand that the media can be your enemy, it can be your friend, and when you're under investigation, often silence is the best tactic.
Yeah, and Emmett Flood is, of course, from Williams and Connolly, and this is funny, Professor. When you've been just like you, I feel like I've been around for a long time now, and Emmett was my
You've been around like 6 years.
Oh, thank
you. I've been doing this 54 years.
Well, thank you. Well, anyway, Emmett Flood, who's just hired by the president to represent him in the Mueller investigation, was my co-clerk when I clerked for Ralph Winter on the Second Circuit.
Ralph Winter was my classmate.
That's right.
Yale Law School. He was always the smartest guy in the class.
Oh, so smart.
And then he became the smartest guy on the bench.
Oh, no, he's great. But it's just like such a small world. So Emmett is one of my oldest friends in the world. And he's, he clerked for Scalia a couple of years after I clerked for Thomas. We're just, we're old pals. But I've always said, he's one of the people, if I were Trump, Emmett would be the person I would hire. There's two people in Washington who are in their 50s and just top lawyers. And maybe Emmett's 60 now, but he's just a phenomenal lawyer. He's very quiet. He's I think he's the oldest of 10 kids. His father was a garbage collector in Chicago. I mean, incredible person.
To this question, and from everything I hear, the president tried to get Flood over and over again, and the answer was no. And suddenly, it's not that the president asked Flood just now; it's that Flood finally accepted. Why do you think he changed his mind? That's the question.
Well, I don't know, but I think some of it is, people have cases that are wrapping up. Emmett's one of the busiest litigators out there, and you do have a responsibility to your big clients to finish their cases, and or at least be in a position to hand them off to people who can properly litigate them or settle them.
And I like too is the bipartisanship that is shown in law. here you have the law firm that not only represented Bill Clinton during his impeachment, but David Kendall has been Bill Clinton's personal lawyer since they graduated Yale Law School together in the early 1970s. And it's a firm that's well known for being largely Democratic over the years. Brendan
Ollie
Sullivan,
North.
Obviously. Ollie North,
represented Ollie
that's
North.
a different one, yeah. But here they're bipartisan. They don't take, that's like me. I don't allow my liberal Democratic leanings in any way to intrude on my professionalism, on my support for the Constitution. And I think the fact that Flood is doing this represents the same kind of commitment to the rule of law.
I think that, again, raiding an attorney's office in a case like this, I still go back to that as a complete travesty.
Especially when you then turn over the material that could be privileged to FBI agents and government prosecutors to become the vetting team and the taint team, and then the American Civil Liberties Union issues a report saying, we not only don't attack this, we not only don't criticize it, we applaud it. We think it reflects the rule of law. Where is the ACLU? The reason I have been so vocal in this case, even though I'm a liberal Democrat, is the ACLU is missing in action. They collect all their funds from hate Trumpers, and if they did anything that would be perceived as in any way supportive of the president's civil liberties, they would lose financial support. And so the ACLU has become so totally committed to the hard left Get Trump group that they have abandoned their commitment to civil liberties.
And that's so depressing. And that's extremely depressing. Let's go into the situation with the subpoena where Mueller threatens to subpoena the president to testify, Professor.
Well, he has that power, and the president has the power to fight the subpoena in court. And I suspect one of the reasons Flood is now on the team is he is a brilliant constitutional and legal scholar, and he has the capacity, probably better than some others on the team, to fight this all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And I think the president has substantial ammunition. Number one, I don't think that special counsel can question a president's actions if the actions were authorized by Article 2 of the Constitution. So they can't ask him, why did you fire Comey? They can't ask him, why did you fire Flynn? They can't ask him who he's going to pardon. Those are not questions that can be asked of a president any more than they can be asked of a United States senator or a judge reflecting their votes. So I think we're going to see that fight. We're going to also see the fight as to whether or not some of the questions go beyond the mandate and the authority of the special counsel. But there are going to be some questions that probably in the end the president will have to answer. And those are questions about his business dealings, because I think the courts are not going to support his claim ultimately that it's beyond the jurisdiction of the special counsel. And even if it is, it just gets shifted over to the Southern District where they can ask those questions.
I remember it was last August, I believe, that Ron Rotunda, of course, renowned constitutional scholar.
Wonderful man. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Anyway, he wrote that piece about indicting the president, and I think Starr asked him all those years ago to evaluate whether the federal grand jury could indict a sitting president, and he basically says, no. I mean, you really can't indict a sitting president. You agree with that, right?
I agree with that completely. In fact, I railed against the grand jury that named President Nixon as an unindicted co-conspirator, and I got the ACLU to criticize that. That was back in the day when the ACLU was the ACLU, because it's so unfair to name somebody as an unindicted co-conspirator. They can't fight back. They don't have their day in court. It's just like, writing something on a bathroom wall. You're an unindicted co-conspirator. Now what are you going to do about it? It's so unfair, and I don't think that a president can appropriately be named even as an unindicted co-conspirator in a grand jury indictment. But that's, reasonable people could disagree about that. Look, we're having a great constitutional debate. Some 16-year-old young woman came over to me at some event and said, do you think the president violated the emoluments clause? And I said, how do you know what an emolument is? She said, well, I used to think it was a facial cream, but now I've been following this, and I've learned a lot about the Constitution. So we are really having a lesson in constitutional law. That's the only good thing, I think, that's come out of this whole mess.
Michael Avenatti has said that he's being asked, the attorney for Stormy Daniels, he's being asked to, perhaps join a cable network as a host of his own legal show, and it seems like a lot of his commentary is geared toward titillating the audience rather than representing his client. And he said this. We're going to go to the second soundbite, James. He was talking about the mindset of the Trump legal team. Let's listen.
They're in full panic mode. They don't know what to do. They're digging the hole deeper. And we're going to get to the bottom of this no matter how long it takes. And this is not going to end well. I said it a few weeks ago. I said it last week. I'm going to absolutely, no question, say it again this morning. This president will not serve out this term. I guarantee it.
Okay, and they're not going to show that. They're not going to show that clip 3 years from now when the president finishes his term, and they're not going to. The one thing about the media, they don't hold people responsible for prior views. For example, when I debated Toobin the other night on CNN, he said the president's definitely taking the fifth, and I said on television, I want you to show that clip when the president doesn't take the fifth. People feel free to make all kinds of predictions, and then the predictions turn out to be false. The media doesn't hold them accountable. So I hope the media shows the clip of these predictions when they turn out not to be the case.
But, that's the kind of thing a kind of loudmouth pundit would say. That's the kind of thing you say, like, no, I guarantee it. I'll bet you $100 that Trump. It's not what you do as a lawyer. This is what I'm saying. The Daniels episode is now giving birth to all of these, sideshows and people like Avenatti, and you have to distinguish between what the legal posture of this case is and the blowhards that are out there speaking of things about which they oftentimes know little. And I'm sorry, but I would put that in that category.
The one thing about Avenatti, he has really made a molehill out of a piece of sand. He has taken an incident. Remember, if it happened, it was a consensual one-night affair years and years ago, and a settlement was made, and he's now at the center of all this. This is so peripheral. The president's not going to be foolish enough to testify about any possible relationship he had with Stormy Daniels. He's not going to make the Bill Clinton mistake that your former boss walked him into, Bob Bennett, allowing him to testify about his sex life. I don't think the president's going to make that mistake. So I think the whole Stormy Daniels thing is going to end up being a very small footnote to history.
Yeah, I think, again, to go from Russia, colluded or Russia interfered with the election, which is, if that happened, that's a serious problem, and whether Trump arranged for that or is involved in that, to, okay, this is a non-disclosure about someone trying to shake someone down for money. That is one step away from the blue dress, and it didn't happen in the Oval Office, I can tell you that. Alan Dershowitz, come on TV soon. It's great to talk to you. Love watching you. And thanks so much for being an honest broker in all of this. We'll take a break, close out this hour. Chris Christie was on Good Morning America, and his analysis is always really interesting. We're going to get into that later on the Laura Ingraham Show. Tonight, here's my question. Do you guys want me to have that Michael Avenatti on the Ingraham angle and have a one-on-one with him? What do you think? And on the one hand, I'm so sick of seeing him on every show. On the other hand, I guess it would be kind of fun. I don't know. But I don't know what I don't know about this case. But maybe not. Maybe it would be fun. I don't know. I'm just pondering it. I don't even know if it'd come on, but I'm thinking about it. Would you want to see that one-on-one with the Stormy Daniels attorney? Don't go away.
Your Healthy Radio Addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Wonderful day, passing my way. Knock on my door, even the shore with your eyes. Lovely to see you.
A Catholic high school in Michigan will no longer require female students to wear modesty ponchos at prom if their dresses are deemed too revealing. Divine Child High School in Dearborn requires students and parents to sign a detailed formal dress policy for the prom, which will be next week. The principal issued a statement yesterday saying the ponchos were intended to remind students of the dress code, not to make them feel uncomfortable.
Now, let me just get this straight. This is a Catholic high school, and they properly were instructing girls not to wear dresses that were inappropriately immodest. This has been something I've talked about. It's driven me crazy for years. These dresses, the way you dress, what you reveal when you dress. When you're going out into the outside world, if you're in your own house, I don't care. But the way you dress as a young person, and frankly, as an adult, what you're showing, what you decide not to show, whether your clothes are well put together, whether they're clean, whether they're pressed, that tells the world whether you're a slob and well put together, whether you're promiscuous in some cases, whether you value showing off your body parts. It just sends a message. I'm sorry. And maybe if you're in the entertainment industry and, I guess you sex it up a little bit, but when you're 16, and you can be sexy without being obscene, by the way, as an adult. You can dress in an attractive and appropriate manner without showing everyone everything, okay? And for young girls to do this, and at the same time we're saying, oh, wait, but we're more than our bodies. We're our minds and our beings and our spirit. Okay, if that's the case, then why does the slit go up to your pubic bone on your dress? If you don't want to be judged solely on your looks, why are you advertising that to the public? And why would a school that's supposedly a Catholic school give in to the cultural blowback because they had it was funny that they had a funny reaction to these promiscuous looking gowns?
It's a method of shaming, a method of bullying, a method of degrading the females.
Okay, so how about school uniforms? Are school uniforms bullying, shaming, degrading? Because you go back and you talk to kids about whether they're glad they have school uniforms. And my kids, I have 3 children. They all have school uniforms. All of them are happy to have school uniforms. They all like their school uniforms because it takes the guesswork and talk about shaming. You want to see what shaming is in school? Shaming is when you don't have the money to get the cool clothes or the cool sneakers or frankly the cool dress that is, so short that you can't bend over in it. Okay, so you talk about shaming. Okay, the girls tease each other mercilessly in school. You know that happens. There's a reason they call it the mean girl syndrome, because it is. You take all the guesswork out of that. You know something? We're all going to dress nicely, but we're not going to put on the expensive bling. We're not going to be. When you're older, you're an adult. Dress the way you want to dress. We can still make our own judgments for ourselves, whether that's cool or not. But you're an adult. Dress the way you want to dress. But when you're in high school, do your very best to protect your own power. And as girls, your power, you know what your power is. Hold on to your power. Revealing everything is not holding on to your power. And boys at age 16, 17, 18 are very different from grown men in certain ways. And they're changing, their hormones are flying. Till they're 25, they're not sexually mature. According to all the scientific research, you're not fully developed, your brain, your impulses, all of it. It just, I see these dresses. Do you notice this? And I notice it just in going to sporting events. And that shorts, I mean, when I was growing up, people wore shorts, and they were cool shorts. They weren't long knickers, for God's sake, but they weren't like so short you literally could not bend over because it would become a showing of your private parts. But that's how short the shorts are today. And it is hard. I've been looking for clothes for Maria. It is hard to find clothing that is appropriate clothing these days for girls who are 12, 13 years old.
We are trying to focus on the inner beauty of people and not draw attention to something that doesn't really need to have attention drawn to it.
Is that someone who was in favor of the modesty ponchos? Who's that?
Yeah, that was one of the teachers at the school that was instituting the policy.
Abigail Witten, however, a junior at the Divine Child High School, said she was initially really upset by the idea of the ponchos. I felt it made too quick a judgment of our character and made the assumption that we would all show up in violation of the dress code policy. I thought it was also unfair to certain girls, as most dresses made available by the fashion industry do not allow them to fit their body types without being in violation of the dress code. Well, a friend of mine's daughter, who is a senior, I think she's senior or junior. She's junior. She went to her junior prom. And the junior prom was last weekend. And they sent me the photos of her and her friend, her best friend, and their dates for the junior prom. They looked fantastic. They had long dresses. They were appropriate. They were beautiful. They were elegant dresses. It was gorgeous. I mean, they were appropriate for the age. And then another friend of mine sent me photos of her son, who is also a junior, phenomenal kid, with his date, also at a Catholic school. And not only did she have a short black dress on, lacy dress, she had her midriff, sides of her waist showing on both sides of the dress. I guess there was like netting, but you could see, I thought, that's a flesh-colored dress on the side. That's where, she said, no, that's her skin. She said, Laura, I'm so upset about this, but I don't know what to do. This was the girl that he chose to go to the prom with. She's actually a really nice girl, but I am so upset over these dresses. And when you dance with someone and you have your hand around her waist, you're now really right on her hip bone and her bare skin. I'm sorry, but when you're that age, all of that leads to one place, and it's very difficult. Sexual empowerment. Oh, please. Students in Dearborn, Michigan. We were talking about the modesty poncho and the school backing off. And this woman, Heidi Stevens, writing in the Chicago Tribune, said, I have my doubts about whether these ponchos will work. Teenagers have sex, always have, always will. On average, young people in the United States have sex for the first time around age 17. Among 15 to 19-year-olds, 44% of females and 49% of males have had sexual intercourse. Sticking our heads in the sand or covering them with modesty ponchos won't change those numbers. But empowering teenagers with knowledge about safe sex, it's the same old argument, will decrease the attendant risks. Comprehensive sex education. Oh yeah, we've seen it. By the way, Illinois Senate has passed a bill to incorporate LGBT history in all the public schools in Illinois. That passed yesterday. We might be addressing that tonight on TV. Also provide a welcome opportunity to talk about consent. Now, teenagers in a lot of states can't give consent for sexual activity, Heidi, because it's called statutory rape. So there is no consent if someone is 15 years old in many states across the United States. In some states, even 17 years old, you can't give consent for sexual activity. And I don't know, I talk to a lot of people who have kids at this age, and I talk to the kids themselves because I love hearing what's on their mind. And you talk to these young girls who have been able to stay innocent longer, and I tell you, they, in most cases, they have it more together than the girls who decided to start sleeping around at an early age. They just have it more together. It's just I'm just telling you my own experience and talking to folks. The longer they delay sexual activity, the better off they are, because when a woman has sex, a girl has sex with a boy, very different than when a boy has sex with a girl, meaning girls tend to get more emotionally attached. Girls tend to, the hormones that are emitted obviously goes to childbirth and being able to have a child, and you have a different reaction. I mean, I think that's great that women have a different reaction to men, because I would argue that women have a deeper emotional understanding and capacity. I believe they do in many ways. And certainly when it comes to sexual activity. And so the girls who have sexual intercourse at an early age, you ask them when they're older, are you glad you had sex when you were 15? I will tell you, in my experience, overwhelmingly they said, I wish I waited. Overwhelmingly. Yet these people are writing these columns saying, oh, well, this is what's happening, and you can't just tell them about safe sex. Oh, yeah, because they're all running around having safe sex. Please. Norm in Maine. A lot of people talking about this issue, but, if you can wait and if you can put it off longer for all kids, but for girls especially, you're more empowered. I think you're more confident, and you're less regretful. Let's face it, you don't know what the heck you're doing when you're 15 or 16 years old. Norm.
Hi, how you doing today?
Great, thanks.
Hey, I just got a quick comment to make. Something that I heard a long time ago. That I was told, if you don't want anybody messing with your critters, don't make your barn look like a petting zoo.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
But I mean, it's that's what it is. I mean, come on, what can you do? They go out there like you're saying, and they dress provocatively like that, and then they can't understand why the male that they want people to go back to all of a sudden reacts.
Yeah, well, and look, they're boys. They're falling all over themselves. That's all they think about. I mean, teen boys, they think about school and sports and sex. I mean, that's just the way it is. And it doesn't mean they have to act on it. It doesn't mean girls have to make it easier for them. And you could still dress cool and attractive and without dressing in a way that tells the world that, come on, take me, I'm ready. And I think modesty is something that is underrated in American society. Underrated. I appreciate the call. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, more on this Illinois push to have LGBT history as part of the regular curriculum in public schools. Some people think that's a great idea. Some people say, whoa, the kids don't even know American history, period. Now we're introducing new elements into it that may, in fact, of course, butt up against religious beliefs and so forth of Muslim, Christian, Catholic, even Jewish students. But that's going to be a big debate, I think, in Illinois and already is beyond. We'll take a break. Don't go away.
I want a girl with a short skirt and a long jacket.
I do believe that the school has gone very far with this. As we walk into prom, we are to shake hands with all the teachers, and as you walk through, if a teacher deems that your dress is inappropriate, you will be given a poncho at the door. Who knows what will happen to others who try and speak out against it.
This is the beginning of the end of school uniforms, I can tell you that. There's already a piece, why do high schools still have terrible dress codes? Terrible dress codes. Just come in a thong. Just come in a thong. And then complain that someone's sexually harassing you. Just walk in a thong. It's ridiculous. We have a lot to get to. A lot of people are on the line about this Michelle Obama statement that she'll be your forever first lady. Well, she was giving a speech about empowerment and success to a bunch of high school kids in Philly, and they love Michelle there, and she was just trying to give them some love back. We'll take calls on that and the prom deal. All right, let's go to MR. MR describes it as Northern Virginia. MR, go ahead.
Hello, Ingraham. Hello.
Oh,
hello.
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, you can speak now.
Ingraham, it's been a while. I have been watching your Ingraham angle. Lord, that sure needs help. A lot of help. I never think you're going to end that angle once you start. That thing starts, it's like a mini-series, that thing. You want to serialize that, over many
monologue?
nights.
Well, thanks for the compliment.
That monologue goes on and on. But I have to say, I heard your comments, cruel comments, about Michelle Obama. And let me just say about Michelle, right off the bat, if there's a forever anybody, it should be the forever great-grandmother and the forever grandmother. If there was a first any lady in that house, honey, it was Marion Robinson. I can tell you that from experience. I saw it with my own eyes. I can't tell you how.
Well, what do you mean? Well, why is she the forever grandmother?
Well, let's face it. Michelle Obama's out there saying, I am the first lady forever. But let me tell you something, honey. She did very little in that White House. I was the one who taught those children their lessons. I was the one who took them to school. Marion Robinson was the one who took them to school and gave them the dinner.
Wait.
Got them ready for the prom. Like you were talking about the prom, honey? I was the one who made sure those girls' hems were at the right length.
Wait a second.
Not that length anymore, honey. Hello?
Wait, you just said I. You said I was the one who made sure they did their lessons. You didn't say Marion Robinson.
I was misspoken. Being on the line with such a celebrity, I must have misspoke.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean Marion Robinson.
What do you think about Diamond and Silk? Are you a Diamond and Silk fan? Because they're strong women.
Well, I've always preferred, honestly, satin and rubies. That's what I wear. So I don't know about no Diamond and Silk. Sorry, can't comment.
Well, I think that being a forever first lady, didn't Ivana Trump say? Ivana Trump was kind of annoyed at one point and said, "I'm the first lady."
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
she said she was the first lady, and that was true. She was before Melania. I remember that when they were married and living in the Trump Tower. Mm-hmm.
I think Michelle might be jealous of Melania. I think she might be jealous.
Michelle's not jealous of Melania. Wait, hold the thought. Michelle Obama, she was inspirational in her own way, and she was our first lady for 8 years. Give her some respect, Ingraham Angle. Do you hear me? You got to give her a little respect. Props are demanded.
Is this Marion Robinson? Is this the former first grandmother calling in?
I cannot comment, but all I'll say to you is shut up and pundit. Goodbye, Ingraham.
Shut up and pundit? Did she use pundit as a verb?
This week on All of the Above with Norman Lear, actor-author Sean Penn sits down with Norman and Paul to talk about his new book, Bob Honey Who Just Do Stuff.
Perhaps a truth worth grabbing and holding on to for dear life, that where life is really lived in the simple places of love and happiness. Bob owned neither. And in lieu of that, only solitude would suffice.
Be sure to download new episodes of All of the Above with Norman Lear every Monday on the Podcast One app, at podcastone.com, or at Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to leave a rating and review.
Oh, teacher, I need you like a little child.
Next tonight to the growing teacher walkouts, images from Arizona and Colorado this evening. In Denver, teachers marching in a sea of what they're calling Red for Ed, their two-day walkout for higher pay and more funding for their schools. And in Arizona tonight, where their salary is among the lowest in the nation, they plan to stay on the picket line, they say, indefinitely.
Teacher,
Teachers protesting, unions urging them to picket and walk out, and want a number of concessions from states where they're seeing their budgets really crunched. And, the cost per pupil in public schools to educate a child in various communities is higher than ever. Yet we see results at 65% of public school 8th graders are not proficient in reading. This is the national assessment, the NAEP test. They're not proficient in reading, and 67% are not proficient in math. That is terrifying. So everyone who's a parent, the NAEP tests, the kids take these. Among the large 27 urban districts for which the Department of Education published in 2017, the Detroit public schools had the lowest percentage of students who scored proficient and better or better in math, and the lowest percentage who scored proficient or better in reading. Only 5% of Detroit public school 8th graders were proficient or better in math, and only 7% were proficient or better in reading. In the Cleveland public schools, only 11% of 8th graders were proficient or better, only 10% proficient or better in reading. Baltimore, we've had so many problems in Baltimore. 11% proficient or better in math, only 13% proficient or better in reading. Fresno public schools, huge immigrant population there, only 11% were proficient or better in math, 14% proficient or better in reading. Does any of this surprise you? To me, it's not. Sadly, it's not surprising at all. I mean, I see the results when I just get resumes. When I get resumes for various jobs that I hire for, and the old stuff I used to do, and some of my new ventures, even kids who go to pretty good colleges, poor grammar, mistakes on resumes, not a great deal of confidence in their spoken word, let alone in their written word. Now, I don't know about the math skills because I don't require math skills for what I do on either on work on the internet or in radio, or television. But in written performance, boy, can you tell a lot about how much a person has read, how much they've really written, how frequently they've written, and whether they know basic grammar, basic history.
Why would you not want to provide our kids with the best possible education? We do our best here. I need my leaders, I need my government to do the same. I need them to bring it every day, every single day, because I do.
Okay, well, with all due respect, we spend more per pupil than we did 25 years ago. And yet we have declining performances. Donald Trump is speaking now at the White House, I believe. Let's listen in.
It's wonderful to be here on this glorious spring morning as we celebrate the National Day of Prayer at the White House in the Rose Garden. I want to thank Vice President Mike Pence and Karen for joining us. Very special people. Thank you very much. We are truly blessed to have a Vice President and a Second Lady who believe in the power of prayer and the glory of God. And they do believe. I'm with them a lot. They believe. Good. Thank you, Mike. Thanks also to the members of the Cabinet who have joined us today, along with so many amazing faith leaders from across the country, including my good friend, Paula White, who's done such an incredible job. Paula, stand, Paula. Thank you, Paula. And the president of the National Day of Prayer, Dr. Ronnie Floyd. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Thanks, Ronnie. I especially want to recognize Sissy Graham. And I will now add that word Lynch because I always call her Sissy Graham, but it's really Sissy Graham Lynch. You like it that way better, right? Don't you think I like it that way, too? I like it that way because you're married to a great gentleman, a fantastic man. So, Sissy, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it very much. Priest Narayanachar, Sister Bingham, Chaplain Agbera, Rabbi Shemtov, Cardinal Wuerl, and the Hope Christian Church Choir. I heard you, by the way, right inside the Oval Office. That was beautiful. That was great music. Thank you. Thank you very much. As we gather this morning, our thoughts also turn to the memory of a man who awakened the light of God in the hearts of millions of America's pastors, and that's the great, legendary, wonderful Billy Graham. Great man. Great. So, Sissy, I want to thank you for carrying on your grandfather's incredible, towering legacy. Today we remember the words of Reverend Graham. Prayer is the key that opens us the treasures of God's mercies and blessings. Always beautiful. And when he said it, it meant so much. When I say it means something, but I liked when he said it better. Right? I think he did that a little better than I do. Reverend Graham's words remind us that prayer has always been at the center of American life because America is a nation of believers. Right? So true. The prayers of religious believers helped gain our independence, and the prayers of religious leaders like the Reverend Martin Luther King, great man, helped win the long struggle for civil rights. Faith has shaped our families, and it's shaped our communities. It's inspired our commitment to charity and our defense of liberty. And faith has forged the identity and the destiny of this great nation that we all love. Americans of faith have built the hospitals that care for our sick, the homes that tend to our elderly, and the charities that house the orphaned, and the minister, and they really do, they minister to the poor, and so beautifully and with such love. We are proud of our religious heritage, and as president, I will always protect religious liberty. We've been doing it. We've been doing it. Last year on this day, I took executive action to prevent the Johnson Amendment, a disaster, from interfering with our First Amendment rights. I was so proud of that. I've been saying from the beginning, you know that. I was saying for a long time we're going to do that. Across the government, we have taken action to defend the religious conscience of doctors, nurses, teachers, students, and groups like the Little Sisters of the Poor. In January of this year, I was proud to be the first president to stand here in the Rose Garden to address the March for Life. A very special day. And my administration has spoken out against religious persecution around the world, including the persecution of many, many Christians. What's going on is horrible. And we're taking action. We are taking action. We condemn all crimes against people of faith. And today we are launching another historic action to promote religious freedom. I will soon be signing an executive order to create a faith initiative at the White House. Thank you very much. The Faith Initiative will help design new policies that recognize the vital role of faith in our families, our communities, and our great country. This office will also help ensure that faith-based organizations have equal access to government funding and the equal right to exercise their deeply held beliefs. We take this step because we know that in solving the many, many problems and our great challenges, faith is more powerful than government, and nothing is more powerful than God.
I have never heard a president of the United States speak repeatedly, and we're going to stay with this, repeatedly and so emphatically about religious liberty, faith, prayer, even Jesus Christ, than I have Donald Trump. I mean, this is stunning. And now a faith initiative at the White House, religious conscience protections, end of the Johnson rule that churches can't get involved in any political activity. He continues to speak.
John grew up without his father. As he tells it, my mother was strong, but she wasn't able to keep us out of the gangs and off the streets, right? John was in and out of jail for years until at age 38, he was arrested for bank robbery. You don't look like a bank robber, John. It's come a long way. John soon ended up in federal prison, relegated to solitary confinement. That's where God found him. John began to read the Bible and listen to Christian radio, right? Yes, so incredible. Incredible.
This is fantastic.
One morning at 2 a.m., he woke up to the voice of the great Billy Graham. Reverend Graham's words came through the airwaves. Jesus wants to be Lord of your life. That night, John dedicated his life to Christ. He spent the rest of his time in prison praying, studying the Bible, and bringing the Lord to his fellow inmates. The day after John's release, a visitor knocked on his door. It was the man who put him in jail, FBI Special Agent Richard Beasley. Who's here? Richard? Come on up, Richard. I want you to know that I've been praying for you very strongly. He said that. God called me to the FBI in part because of you, John. The two are now lifelong friends. John, do you like him?
I love him.
Oh, you love him? That's nice. That's beautiful. John runs a ministry that has helped more than 2,000 former inmates rejoin society. And
all right, we're going to take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show, but I find the president speaking about matters of faith, inspiration, personal redemption, the power of prayer, Jesus Christ, religious liberty, conscience rights. I find it inspiring. I find it, it's startling. It is Donald Trump, who's been married 3 times, who's obviously has had a very interesting life, and yet maybe he's the perfect person in a way. We're all flawed, and he's not perfect, but maybe he's the perfect person in a way to encourage this almost religious revival in the United States. It's almost a revival spirit where people of faith don't have to feel like they're second-class citizens when it comes to government funding, when it comes to government access to, to places to speak or to be given a platform, and even being involved in politics if you're a religious person. This is where Donald Trump, I think, has been underrated by so many in the elite community because they look down oftentimes at people of deep faith. But this is why evangelicals, despite Stormy Daniels and the Billy Bush tape, all this stuff, evangelical support and faithful Christian support of Donald Trump is very, very high right now. We're going to take a break, close out this hour. Remember the Ingraham Angle tonight, a phenomenal show on tap. More on the Rudy Giuliani comment fallout and a lot more coming up.
I say a little prayer for you.
The president's new executive order on religious freedom is long overdue, and it's a gift to all of us. This should just be obvious to all of us that we should be able to act out our religious conscience. We shouldn't be forced to do things against our religious conscience, whether it's in public schools as parents with your kids being taught things that are against your religious understanding, or any of the other crazy things that are happening in the culture. Thank you, President Trump, for doing this. By the way, the Wall Street Journal, in their editorial on another subject, hits Rod Rosenstein for saying that the Justice Department will not be extorted in the response to the threat of impeachment from the Freedom Caucus. That isn't happening here, writes the Journal. In the cases at hand, Congress is acting through its commitment as a separate and co-equal branch of government. The branch that funds the Justice Department has the right and obligation to exercise oversight. Congress is making specific document requests regarding specific questions. In other words, cough up the documents in a timely fashion, Rod, and then you won't be faced with articles of impeachment. It's just ridiculous. The choice of the word extorted by Rosenstein is illuminating. Yeah, they're not obliged at DOJ just to open up their doors and give all deliberative communications, but basic documents relating to a spying on an American citizen absolutely are entitled to that.
The Department of Justice is not going to be extorted.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
The hit true crime series, Murder Made Me Famous, is now on Podcast One, showcasing some of the most notorious crimes imaginable, including Scott Peterson, Jodi Arias, Ted Bundy, and more. See how murder made them famous. New episodes starting every Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, as well as podcastone.com and the Podcast One app. And check out the new season of Murder Made Me Famous starting Saturday, April 14th on the Reels channel.
The Payment. I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. President Trump acknowledges his attorney, Michael Cohen, was reimbursed for making a $130,000 hush payment to porn actress Stormy Daniels in the days before the 2016 election.
This wasn't something that was initially known, but later learned.
Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says she didn't know about it until she heard Rudy Giuliani speak on Fox News Channel.
The first awareness I had was during the interview last night.
Giuliani said in a televised interview that Trump didn't know the full details of the payments until about 10 days ago. The Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences voted to expel two prominent members convicted of sexual offenses, Bill Cosby and Roman Polanski. Polanski remains a fugitive after pleading guilty to unlawful sex with a 13-year-old girl. He fled the U.S. in 1978. Bill Cosby was convicted last week of sexual assault in Pennsylvania. More women are coming forward accusing Charlie Rose of sexual misconduct. I'm Ed Donahue.